Welcome to Thomas's Driving Lounge with the new Mercedes G-Class today with the 350 diesel. So it's really interesting because acceleration wise it's just 1.5 seconds slower than the G500, and sound wise, well, it's a pretty new diesel. You hear it somehow, it is a diesel, but it does not have the very typical diesel nailing. So it also shows it's a very new and evolved diesel engine. And again, you have abundance of power. And we're going up the hill now. Of course, this is not really a good consumption test, but it's a good test for the handling and also for the performance of this engine. We have different driving modes. For example, the Eco mode that reduces the throttle input, so for better consumption. Then we have the Comfort mode, which I'm in so far, and the Sport mode would boost the engine setup a little bit. More throttle input, easier now to apply it. That is of course helping me uphill, and you already hear that the gears are turned up higher, the car is shifting up later. Overall, this new generation has been improved in the handling and in the suspension comfort. However, if you're going over some transverse bumps, then you can't expect a comfort, for example, with an air suspension of a Mercedes GLE or like an other modern SUV. So as long as the roads are quite even, it's pretty cool. You can enjoy this upright seating position. You have the best overview from all Mercedes SUVs, because the hood is relatively low to the relation to where you're sitting. So this is really cool. But then again, if you face some transverse bumps, you still feel that you have a rigid suspension or rigid axle in the rear. So there is definitely a difference. As long as we're driving slowly, as for the total speed, it's also okay for the noise insulation. It's quite silent in here. Just when you're going over 100 kilometers or over 62 miles an hour, then you feel that you're basically facing the wind with this very upright windscreen. So you have to be aware of that. It's not the best and most comfortable high-speed Autobahn cruiser, but it's a good cruiser when you're at low and middle speeds. And it's just so much fun because this car also transports this character while driving it. This pure off-road character with the edges, you can see it in the front hood, at the sides, upright at the windows, and again, the great overview you have. So the handling so far, here up the hill, is pretty nice. It's not super sporty, that's not how it's supposed to be. So the suspension is always, you see it here, quite soft. You can shake the car as it still has this off-road focus. That's how it's supposed to be. But considering the weight of the car and the off-road focus of the car, it's still somewhat fun to drive it also here up the hill. And again, not missing any performance of a G500. This diesel here does very well. Of course, at a later stage I would be interested for a long-term consumption test, but we can surely say that you will at least save about 2 liters on 100 kilometers with the diesel if you compare it to the petrol engine. And of course there's also a lower entry price, so that might be another argument for the diesel. So that's it here in the road driving already. Also good that the car is not too wide. It has become wider than before, massively, but again, if you compare it to other full-size SUVs, it's still smaller, and that's also good for the handling and also for the feel that you don't feel too big even on some narrower roads. And now we'll have a special winter driving part here on snow and ice. There's a little ice layer just under the snow, so we have to be careful, especially when we're going down. Not such a problem when we're going uphill. Let me tell you something about the tires, because already on the road I felt that this car here now is more comfortable than we were driving it in summertime. And the reason is, in the summertime, right, we had bigger alloys and also summer tires, so there was less tire left. And now we are on winter tires and it's 19-inch rims, so the ride is more comfortable because there's just more tire left to even stuff out. So if you seek more comfort, stay with smaller rims. If you want a rather stiff and more bumpy experience, then go for the bigger rims. Of course, it's always a visual theme, but I think this off-road car look here is totally fine also when you are with smaller rims. The all-wheel drive distribution, it's a permanent all-wheel drive here, the old school stuff. 9-speed automatic converter gearbox. So the all-wheel drive distribution has been 50-50 front rear in the predecessor. And now in the new generation they've switched it to 40-60, so 40% in the front, 60% at the rear. This makes the car a little bit sportier, so a little bit of a rear wheel bias. That helped us especially when road driving. Still, as we've seen also in our initial episode with the G-Class, you should check that out later, it is massively off-road capable still. So it's really astonishing what obstacles it can face. That was really, really cool. So this is here the Timmelsjoch, over 2,000 meters, and it's basically closed at that time, so they opened it for us exclusively to have some snow riding experience. And so far, I mean, if you have good new winter tires, those are normal winter tires, not special snow something, you don't feel so much of a difference. Of course, it will get a little bit snowier now, but the car gives me a good and safe feeling. It's also accounting for this good overview and the upright seating position I have. This is also something which really helps you also in adverse conditions. So like this, you know, the visibility is not that good. Also when the car is driving in front of you. This is our instructor car because you're not allowed to drive alone up here. It's a GLC coupe, by the way, if you have wondered. It's hard to recognize it in this snowy surrounding, definitely, and also to differentiate between GLC and GLE coupe, for example. So now you see it's getting snowier and snowier, and the all-wheel drive is giving me a harmonious feeling. So getting pulled from the front, getting pushed from the back at the same time, so that gives me also good grip when accelerating. So even if I step on the throttle a little bit harder at some point. What did he say? I have no idea. Sometime, yeah. I have no idea. So we have some... you get some... or we turn it off, rather. That you're not annoyed by that. So now it's getting really interesting because left and right are some snow barriers, and well, I should not do any mistakes now because this is hard packed snow. It's like concrete. We shouldn't hit that. Also the ground, you maybe also hear that on camera now, the ground gets a little bit rougher. So there's this snow ice mix also from cars that have been running there initially. And that gets also a little bit rougher from suspension. But again, just prove my key finding for today is also that you should really go with some smaller rims. I know a lot of guys want to put huge rims on their G-Class, but again, you do lose a lot of comfort by that for sure. But here, again, very safe feeling. So also in this little bit faster off-road driving, G-Class performs very well. And here's again another situation where a nice red color as well, right? But I prefer the brilliant blue here still. So when it's getting a little bit narrower, it's again good proof that the G-Class is really suitable. It's not that wide. Still in this new generation, it's a little bit narrower than some of the other big full-size SUVs. Again, I can just stress that this feeling is really good because a lot of those full-size SUVs, especially when you drive them in Europe, not such a problem in the US, they're getting too big for some roads or parking lots and stuff. And even though this car appears so huge, it's not as big as the other travel full-size SUVs. Now it's also getting a little bit more loose, but the traction control is very well applied, that we don't have too much wheel spin. Of course, for off-road use or in the off-road modes, you would turn that traction control off or have it in the off-road mode where it's drawn back, that you get a little bit more wheel spin for off-road situations. Also 3 differential locks, as I've shown you earlier. We used that one also in our harder off-road driving test. Now let's see the brakes. The ABS is working, but we still got some grip on that snow that came overnight. You always see that the steering has an off-road focus. It is very easy to control, and you don't have to have much power. By the way, if you hear there's some like bell ringing sound, that's from one of the suitcases in the back. It's not from the vehicle. The vehicle itself, there's no rattling or something whatsoever. It's just because those little small bumps make the car shake just a little bit. So, but you see, when I turn the steering wheel, there's no dead zone, so something is happening at any time. But it is definitely set rather on an off-road character, so you have to steer more. So when those off-road cars are really controlled in a rough way, you need to have some more steering feel, that you can have some precise maneuvers, and also that when something is changing the tires on the ground, that the steering wheel is not shaken all over the place from the feedback and maybe dislocates your thumb. That's why you also should keep your thumb on the steering wheel when driving off-road. You know, for normal road driving, this can be a little bit distracting because you have to steer quite a lot, you know. So for normal road use, it would be a little bit cooler if you would need to steer less. It would be more dynamic, more direct. However, still, it gives you a very natural steering feel, so it is still fun to do that, and you get a good feeling for the car overall. Wow, now the visibility is going down massively, but the thing I really enjoy is getting in those corners and then accelerating out of it. You know, then you also feel something of the rear wheel bias, that the rear comes around just a little bit. That's the fun part of it, and also one of the changes here in the new generation. So this additional 10% they put on the rear axle is actually helping. And I have the feeling we're a little bit better on the way than the GLC in front of us. But it's just maybe just my feeling or assumption. Wow, it's really cool going up that here. We've been before here, by the way, on an Audi special episode in the summer. That was, I think, wow, was it 2013 or something? So a couple of years ago, but was also getting some amazing footage. Now we're at 2,500 meters, so pretty high. Air is getting thin. And here we are.